Hello everyone, welcome on a new episode of Robert Spotlight. Robert Spotlight. Robert Spotlight. Robert Spotlight. Robert Spotlight.
Doing all this moderation stuff for Discord.
I'm a social media futurist.
Been a moderator at Be Friends.
Now it's my project because I love sports.
I'm speaking at NFT NYC.
Welcome on the show. Welcome everyone and welcome on a new episode of Robert Spotlight. And Robert Spotlight today, Andrej Berlin. Welcome on the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Perfect. Andrej, could you introduce yourself for people that don't know you?
Yeah, sure. I'm Andrej Berlin. I'm the co-creator and kind of contributor to the Deep Work ecosystem. I co-founded and created Deep Work Design Studio, which is a permissionless or semi-permissionless product design studio in Web3. Before that, I was working in product design and workshop facilitation. And yeah, that's probably the short intro, but I'm happy to go into deeper.
Yes, we are definitely going to do that. So, but just before we are going to do a quick rapid fire question, you know, I'm thinking about post-production for social media. And basically the idea is I'm going to ask you a question and you will reply in under than 30 seconds. You know, so it's just 4 or 5 questions. And after we are going to go deep on deep work and everything that you are doing.
Awesome.
Right?
Sounds good.
So what is your name?
Andrej Berlin.
What is the name of your company?
Deep Work.
What problem your company is solving?
So Deep Work is solving the problem of coordination of labor, especially in a remote space. But Deep Work Studio, which is a design studio and part of that ecosystem, is concerned with product design for technical teams and startups and Series A companies. Yeah, product design and branding at the moment.
Perfect. What makes your solution different than the competition?
It's a quite unique infrastructure for labor coordination. So we are a collective of freelancers that are only doing the work because they love doing the work and the conditions that they operate in. And we, at the same time, we can produce very predictable outcomes and very predictable high quality deliverables in terms of design. So everything that we do and how we do it is open source. We don't sign NDAs, so we can release and talk about our work in all domains. So whether it's about product design or anything else that we do in general. So everything is as public as it can be. And people are highly motivated to do the best work that they can do. And again, it's a viable business model. So it's also from the outside, it looks like a normal company, but it operates on completely different infrastructure.
Perfect. And how do you see the evolution of your industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think work is just going to become part of the integral part of people's lives, and I can see that people will transition more and more into self-sufficient and autonomous kind of behaviors. So whether it's on an individual level, that people will seek more freedom in terms of what they do rather than going into long-term contracts of companies. Or as groups of people, as like teams who want to work together on something as individual little pods, or organizations, and they are kind of still very interoperable. So I think what the industry, especially in kind of my environment, is evolving towards is like a highly resilient kind of infrastructure for companies and organizations and DAOs to be able to do very high quality work, but also adapt to change very, very quickly and a lot quicker than we are currently used to, including individuals who are, I can see, learning to adapt to environmental changes on an individual level a lot faster than ever before, regardless of their age.
Perfect. So thank you for all these questions. And now let's start the real conversation.
Awesome.
So what could you say about deep works for people that don't know? So basically a picture in your mind that it's someone that it's not involved in any tech industry and he don't know anything about Web3 and anything. How could you describe your project to that person?
Yeah, I would separate it kind of, first of all, in two different stages. There's, mental models. Deep work is like an overarching company. It's actually a combination of a lot of different teams that work together. And the most prominent and currently, I would say, the most accessible team is the Deep Work Studio, which is this product design studio. So to the outside, it just looks like a general design studio that works with Web3 teams, or like, let's say, with teams, highly technical teams that work on blockchain-based technologies, whether it's DeFi or any social networks. But what is kind of special about it is that everybody or anyone can kind of directly see how the work is being done by browsing through our Notion, by joining our Discord, by asking some individuals in our community who are actually actively working on projects to just shadow the work, which is not something that you could normally do. So I'm not aware of many organizations and companies that allow anyone from the internet to just come in and say like, hey, I want to shadow, I want to look over your shoulder and see how you work on this client project. So this is probably how I would describe Deep Work Studio, which is, it's a design studio. So we run a lot of alignment workshops with these teams, with clients, to design with them together collaboratively. And then there's usually a phase of individual kind of high focus design of our team. So we create a lot of the deliverables in Figma at the moment, prototypes, and then we user test them. So we actually create prototypes that are interactive and then have interviews with people to click through them and tell us what they think. And then that data, that kind of user testing or user research data, informs how the product is being built and actually implemented over time. So that's kind of the gist of our working processes. And you can kind of come in and observe how everything gets done and learn from that approach and try to also apply it yourself on your own projects, because the documentation of how we do it is public. And if you are, if you are a technical team, it's probably useful to know that our designers are very well versed in a lot of different technologies and a lot of different, specifically technological and business development areas, and understand the language that developers also speak. And the design approach is highly collaborative. It's very, very fast. It's faster than any other traditional process for designing. It's based on a design sprint. And there's a lot of kind of different ways to approach different stages of projects. I think I'm drifting away already. So
no. I was just listening to try to gather all the information and try to ask a relevant follow-up question. So my understanding is the main difference between any other studio, it's the permissionless, right? It's the fact that instead of being behind closed door, everything is open, and it's and it's a one key differentiator, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I would also say that our process is very specific. So, and this is something that is kind of connected with what you're saying. It's permissionless, and the operational processes are public. I don't know how most agencies work at the moment. I do know approximately from having friends who run them and from having a background in working in a closed studio. But our process is very specific, and it's being iterated and improved upon with each single project, and you can see kind of the change, how it's done. So I think another thing that's also differentiated is that our processes for designing improve over time and adapt to the actual needs of the industry. So it changes over time as things become more important.
And when you say industry, are you talking about Web3 ecosystem?
Yeah, mostly. I think so. Most of our clients are from the Web3 ecosystem at the moment. We have worked with non-Web3 companies too, though, in the past. So it's not that that's a limitation. But yeah, most of I am talking about mostly Web3 teams.
Okay, perfect. And what are the perception of your client today? What are they saying to you regarding the fact that everything is permissionless? Did there is any issue regarding the fact that some customer may say, oh, we used to work in closed door, here we are not very comfortable? Or do you approach this shift from a customer perspective?
From a customer perspective, there's not really a lot of conversation about it at the moment because they really care mostly about the design and the deliverables. So it's not really that that has been brought up any time. It's also part of our kind of company values. So it's kind of obvious that if you work with deep work, that there is almost like a personal agreement on how the deliverables will be handled. So we respect a lot our clients' kind of requirements and needs. So if they say that we want to keep this private and we do not want to publish it until a specific time, we fully respect that and also don't share it. It's only been brought up in a conversation before a project would start, and then we would talk and find out a way how we could benefit each other under these considerations. There have been cases where we had to decline projects because they were very attached to keep everything private and not release any material at all. And because most of our people are interested in not just working on these projects, but also kind of knowing as much as possible upfront that it's going to be enjoyable to work on these projects, and also benefit the wider community of designers by being able to share the results, which is kind of a side effect. So you work on these projects, and then based on the work, you solve a lot of design problems. And one of the reasons why we do share these case studies and the work is because other designers can just come in and copy paste the Figma files in order to create their own products that might also be really nice. And so because that's a kind of a secondary value, there were some hard boundaries on client side sometimes where we couldn't find an agreement that worked for both sides. But in general, I think my sense is that the quality and speed of deliverables is much more important for clients than where the designs end up eventually.
Okay. And in your perspective, having a permissionless approach makes that the quality and the speed is going to be higher than a closed door approach?
I think what is definitely higher quality is the work of the contributors as they become a core part of the team. So this permissionlessness allows new contributors to just peek in and slowly, from the stage of being kind of a shadower on the work and just becoming interested in the material, or actually already expressing that interest, to read up how everything is done on their own from a documentation, for example, find solutions for their own kind of creative approach to work, and then slowly, step by step, be guided through the process by being introduced to specific smaller challenges on the proximal zone of their development. And that leads to a very, very smooth onboarding into the high quality work, so that I have seen very nice user researchers to just come in and over the course of 2 to 3 projects basically come from, doing some general user testing in the past, or maybe some unstructured user testing, to be really, really good at asking exactly the right questions, at documenting exactly the right answers, and providing the right recommendations to clients, or like, very high quality recommendations to clients, just because they were introduced to these projects in a very kind of organic manner through the help of different experts who were always sharing their learnings with them. So I think the permissionlessness allows for this mentorship dynamic to be kind of an integral part of the network.
Okay, so it's like my understanding. It's like it's really with the idea of open source. It's like a sharing thought. Basically, we share the thought, and no one starts from scratch. Basically, it's everyone that wants to start is going to start with all the previous brainstorming, if I can say so.
I would say so. Yeah. So it's a very smooth onboarding. It's not like there's a hard line, like from now on you're hired. It's like you're learning over time how the company operates and what are the specifics of the labor.
Okay, what could you say? So permissionless, it's one key difference. You talk also about the process public, the public process. Could you expand your thought about the public process?
Yeah, definitely. I first came across the design sprint process in 2015, 2016. 2016, the actual book from Jake Knapp was released, and then the year after, we actually worked with him on a few like events and kind of also improving that process in the agency that I was working at before, called AJM Smart. The process is generally very interesting because the foundation of it applies to a lot of different creative work. So you have these 3 stages. You have kind of a creative phase where you come up with the concept or the design of something, and this creative phase is extremely collaborative. So we're using design thinking guided workshops based on, it's called a note and vote technique, but I actually think that it's kind of almost like a communication protocol that involves many people to make very quick, short-term, ad hoc decisions in a very short amount of time, and get to a decision together that they can align on within like a few hours, rather than taking like months of back and forth and like trying to align everybody and all the stakeholders. So that's already a very, very efficient part, because it saves a lot of time, the actual kind of creative approach and the condensation of the idea. Then we have prototyping, which is essentially taking all these ideas and all the decisions that have been made right away and building as fast as possible something that's a prototype, something that other people can play with, and that articulates the idea beyond just words or beyond a text-based description into something that's as close to the real product as possible. So when you actually show it to people, they think that, they know it's a prototype, but for the most part, they think that it's almost like an illusion that this is real, that this can exist, because they can interact with it and they get a response from that. And that's essentially the part of the third step, is getting high quality user research data on how this prototype in a very short time span actually performs with individuals of a very particular target audience that you have agreed upon in the beginning. And that almost like gives you a sneak peek into how a wider market would operate with your idea and with your concept. And of course, you can kind of run this iteration loop as many times as you want. Our kind of experience is that running it twice gives you really, really good data to what exactly to implement. So we kind of we run it once and then we iterate again. So we make some decisions to how to change, we prototype again, user test again, and then we basically create all the visual assets so that it's clear what needs to be implemented. So and all of the exact details and constraints and boundaries of each of these stages are documented online, so you can read up on them and go into as much detail as you want, and like try it out, that process yourself. I recommend it highly, just because it takes like a week to go through one stage, and it's not like a full day every week. It's more like 4 hours max every day. But it depends on how you approach it. You can also spend longer. And so that process is extremely efficient because it aligns every stakeholder. It creates a very high quality prototype that is representing kind of the reality, and it gets you market data and validation in like a week or several weeks of time, rather than a lot of back and forth and revalidation. And I think it's probably kind of the shortest process that takes into consideration the development of everything else around. So if you take too long to design a prototype, then the industry has already changed. We see that in Web3, how fast new technologies emerge and new things, like new ideas change everything. And so if you take like 2-3 months to prototype something, then your initial idea has now, like, your initial idea might be exactly the same, right? But what the market is expecting has already changed. So you need to be kind of as fast as possible at producing a prototype in order to actually capture the demand of the market and see if what you're building makes sense or if you should pivot quick.
Okay, perfect. Makes sense. No, it makes a lot of sense. So I have a couple questions. So first, you say that people can find that online. Where people can find some example? On your website, on a Deep Work Studio?
Yeah, deepwork.studio, there is a database of all the case studies. You can just click on case studies on the top, and then there's a list of clients that we worked for in the past, and you can click on any one of those, and some of them have a bigger description or a longer description of the case study. Others have a shorter description, but all of them have the files. Most of them, except for a few, they don't have like the workshop files because, again, there was an agreement to not share that. And yeah, you can just copy or like be more or less influenced or inspired by the work that you can see there for any of the individual projects. There's also public documentation under docs.deepwork.studio. That's our kind of process documentation. So if you're interested in how exactly we approach the workshops, like what exactly is the function of the facilitator, or how exactly do our product designers go through the workshops, and then also how they approach designing something that is beautiful but also functional and has a high standard in UX. Although I do have to say that doing it doesn't, like, reading it doesn't replace doing it. So you have to obviously read it, but then also apply it many times in order to get to a level of expertise. So of course you need to understand what's there, but if you're expecting kind of a high skill from just reading, you still need to apply that knowledge somehow to make sure that it makes sense to you and that you can kind of practice the skills.
Okay. And do you have any expectation on having kind of incoming applicant? So it's like me asking to you, like, you are a subgroup of Deep Work. I have understood that. Yeah. You are the design arm of Deep Work, and you are a group of freelancers. So at some point, you need to have more and more freelancers in order to handle the workload, right? So my question is, did there is on the back of your mind also the idea of, because everything is open source, this open source thing is going to bring you new freelancer?
Yeah, that's what's happening. I mean, our community, our open Discord is very full. So there's a lot of people who have signed up, who are interested in and kind of are shadowing. I know that just because they joined the Discord and I see that pop up and they introduce themselves briefly. Only a few really stick around and like actually comment or participate, because our Discord is like a working Discord. It's not like everybody's chit-chatting about everything. So it's very quiet. So I rarely see people kind of, I rarely see any one of the, like, I think 1,500 people who are signed up also say something. It's more like maybe 100 of those I am aware of. But yeah, and in terms of the kind of expansion, so again, this is actually that's the kind of outest layer of the community, but then there's also the matching with the projects, because until you can really work on a client project, you need to prove that you can actually follow that documentation to someone else. And this is our kind of onboarding process, so that essentially you require a project to show your skills. And then once you've done that, you receive like a badge that verifies that that's your skill, you can do that. And then you're like a verified freelancer who can just go away and then come back or not come back, but still have that badge and show it to someone else or another design studio. Again, this is also kind of a side effect of having public work, is that designers who work on the projects will be directly associated with the result. So any freelancer who can just go away and wants to work somewhere else will be able to say, I worked on this project and this is exactly what I have done. Here's the kind of attestation for that. And so our process of onboarding really depends on the amount of clients we have, so that actually, as long as the amount of clients is stable, so will be the amount of experts with the badges, and that balances each other out. And so currently, for example, we have more freelancers than we have clients. And so freelancers often also just go and seek other work. We are working on more clients, and then that will like shift again, and then it will be, then we'll have like more capacity to onboard new designers or new experts. So it's the system allows for this kind of very organic balance between market and the supply.
Okay. What is your biggest problem running deep work studio?
I think the biggest problem is the complexity of all its individual parts and components, because this the operation is it's very complex and very interconnected, and the environments in which each individual works are very, very different, and it's very difficult to keep track of individual work and their contributions, and pay people according to the value of the work rather than in like the time that they spent, or based on kind of some made up figures that seem unfair to someone. And because of these issues, we are building our own software that supports this way of working, and also an infrastructure that, or like a kind of a data protocol that supports like a kind of a sustainable growth of that ecosystem. Like, as I mentioned, Deep Work Studio is just one component of all of these things, but there are other little components and organizations that, like sub-organizations that form and then they grow, or like they form and then they grow to a small team and then they dissipate again. And that is highly flexible, but at the same time, everybody needs to consider that is just part of the evolution of this ecosystem and in its environment. And for me personally, it's not really a problem. It's just what I'm currently working on is making sure that everyone is aware of how everything works, and that we can avoid issues, complications, and kind of accidents on a scale, or like on the scale that we have right now. Already, like small things happen. Of course, the things that the kind of mistakes that happen are easily fixable and currently not really like crucial, but if you are looking at some complex organizational systems that are very, very large, and the system seems to be growing at the moment, then like combinations of different accidents can lead to catastrophic events, and this is something that we want to avoid. You can't do that in a centralized way. You can't have like me just looking at every single person and being like, hey, you haven't been working here for 2 years, now you worked here and you made that mistake. Like, that's not going to work. It's the whole system that needs to be designed in a way that everybody can work together and there is also no blame on the humans, because I believe that everybody is trying their best to do what they want to do. But again, it needs like very, very clear boundaries for acceptance, acceptance criteria of their function, and a very kind of open yet still resilient infrastructure that keeps everybody's interest in place and also considers people's privacy. So I think that's also one of the parts that is very challenging, is that people do work, but then they also don't always want to share their work because they might be associated with it and it might not be good for their reputation. And there's a lot of problems, I think. It's also not just like exclusively our problem. I think it's like a problem of the ecosystem in general. How do we deal with semi-permissionlessness, essentially? How do we deal with the spectrum of people doing work and feeling proud about their skills and being able to communicate those, but at the same time being able to withhold certain information about like being associated with a company that ended up being a rug pull, but they didn't know it at that time, that might become just misinterpreted and give them a bad reputation. So that goes kind of into personal, into reputation and personal digital identity. I think another thing that is also quite challenging is generally just like the diversity of human environments that kind of come together and still contribute to how people collaborate with each other. And I think what we are, like what I mentioned earlier, what we're seeing is that people are generally becoming more and more self-sufficient, more and more focused on what's important for them, so that they're kind of adjusting their moral compass, filtering out this chaos and noise from the legacy economy infrastructure, and focusing on what's important to them, so that they can become a substantial part of the of a social network that works together on common goals. That was a lot, so I'm going to stop here.
Okay, but for me, you talk about two different problems, and the first one, it's if I get it right, is to handle the balance between having a first system in place in order to value the human that did good, and also balance when human did not good, and to have a system as resilient as possible, to don't break anything if one human fail to deliver in a specific time.
Right. Well, I think it's more, I maybe expressed myself not quite correctly. It's not that like one human is doing something that's wrong. I think, again, like everybody's trying to do the best that they can, but there are different conditions that can lead to undesired outcomes as a combination. So, for example, if one person, and let's say not the person itself, it's more like the function of a person within a particular kind of team or project requires them to do something, and then but then the project somehow is different than the projects before, so that requires the person or the operator of that function to kind of leave the boundaries of what they're used to and do something unusual in order to actually solve the problem. And so that happens almost like all the time, but on different scales. And if many people do that across time in different ways, that can accumulate and kind of combine itself into a bigger problem that is not easily foreseeable.
I get it. So it's like to handle the cause to mitigate the consequence.
Right.
So it's like what you just said. It's like whenever there is a new condition, someone will try to solve it. Maybe that is going to lead to a new cause, and as
Right.
it's a new cause, maybe a new consequence is going to
Right.
appear from that. So it's what
Yeah,
I
potentially.
understood.
Yeah, right.
Okay, makes sense. And so on this first problem, and you said also that it's not a deep work studio problem, it's more like an industry problem.
Mhm.
What are the kind of the innovative way to try to mitigate or to fix this kind of problem?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of them is definitely to be very, very clear about the functions of every individual, like not individual, but like the functions within an organization. So I think, and being public about it. This is one of the reasons why we have a public documentation, is that it's clearly documented what exactly are the projects, what exactly are the functions of, you know, a workshop facilitator, a product designer, like an operations director, finance director, you know, you name it, like all of these functions that are required to sustain the organization, that they're very, very clearly documented, but only to an extent where they communicate the boundaries of that specific function while leaving the freedom to be almost like slightly adjusted, where people can slightly leave the like not leave the boundaries, but where people can still have the freedom to adapt to uncertain situations. And that kind of documentation is, I think, one of the foundations that can mitigate a lot of these problems, is to be very, very clear about it, so that every individual kind of knows what they are working on and like what their responsibilities are. Maybe even map that out in terms of like, here's the functions, and this is a project that recurs every month. Like, these are the recurring tasks that need to be done. Here are the general teams. Like, to just have an overview of how the organization operates, that everybody can see, because what they will also see is how people's individual functions. First of all, they can jump across different functions, but they can see how everything is connected and why everything is connected in a specific way. What are the purposes of a specific team or department? How does that connected with the overall mission of the organization? How do you contribute? How does the specific function contribute to a team? And how does that team contribute to the whole? How are the teams, you know, connected with each other? So yeah, I think that's one of the things. The other thing is, I mean, there's a few kind of smaller side effects, I would say, that are important, is just like mutual mentoring and seeking advice. I think learning and mentoring just needs to be the default. In other organizations that I have experienced, it's not kind of the default to teach people something or to answer questions that might be difficult, or pass on skills. So I think learning and mentorship is extremely important. I think it's important to be very honest and very as much in touch with reality as possible, which sometimes requires conflicts, like interpersonal conflicts, that with the goal of being resolved. So it's not that, our goal is to clash on each other and then hate each other, but to kind of the goal, if a conflict arises, is to resolve it and understand why it has arisen, without blaming an individual, but actually understanding how to make it not arise in the future. Another thing that is probably also pretty big is collective ownership of an organization. It's crazy how much it influences when you can own part of an organization, in terms of you can influence the direction of the organization as an individual, regardless of your function, regardless of whether you're like someone who's just doing like marketing work, for example, as opposed to someone who's like deep in the finances and operations. That might be, I'm not saying that that's overall always the case, but my point is that it might be in these functions might be valued differently in an organization in terms of their weight and influence, but still every single function has an influence on the organization, and that needs to be represented and valued, so that everybody feels like they're contributing to the organization, but they also have the ability to influence it and take part in decisions and have their voice heard. This is what I think Web3 and blockchain technology can support us with, because we don't need accounting, like expensive accounting anymore, to make sure that every single individual, every single individual's contribution will be counted, because we can just use digital tools and blockchain to calculate these, or like to count these, and that having that represented and visualized definitely helps. I think also people's now that are kind of in the topic of governance and voting, it helps thinking about money in a different way. That money is more a representation of the value that people create between each other, rather than an incentive to do something, or like a reason or purpose to do certain work. Primarily, I think my personal kind of understanding is that I do the work because I think it's important, and then I communicate with my environment how valuable that is, and then like numbers and fiat currencies represent the value at this point in time. So that's kind of the order of my thinking. I think that really helps focus on solving the problem rather than just increasing numbers. Although, of course, I'm not saying that people should not think about financial stability. I think that's also very important, which is another thing. I think like health and general mental and financial stability are also very important environments for collaboration. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yes, and a lot of sense. So you talk about governance and voting. So I will assume, so did your organization, it's a DAO?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think DAO is a very easy.
So let me rephrase. Sorry, what is the legal structure of your Deep Work studio?
I think it's a limited company.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's registered as Deep Work Limited. We used to have two companies. One of them has a bank account. Another one did not have a bank account. And yeah, but wait, we do have both. Yeah, we need to pay for software as well.
Okay.
But yeah.
And how do you integrate? Because you say that right now with the blockchain technology,
right,
we can kind of monitor things with digital, and you were talking about governance. So what are the tools that you are using to do that right now?
I mean, we're issuing basically two. So we're issuing fiat currencies to compensate for the work. So, or let's say stable coins, not fiat currencies. Stable coins to compensate for the work. And then we're also sending people a governance token, which is a pure governance token and doesn't have any value. It's not on any exchange. It can't be on any exchange. It doesn't make any sense. And that is relative. That's calculated as a relative amount to the compensation in the stablecoin. So there's like a multiplier by which we multiply the stablecoin amount that calculates. That calculates the amount of governance tokens that an individual would receive, and that's essentially the multiplier is kind of the weight which specifies the amount of governance tokens that people would receive, and that's connected directly to the compensation. So it's like if you have a function, like let's say you're a user researcher, you could receive like 800 USDC or DAI for a project work. You could also receive like 1,600, but the multiplier would be the same. So let's say it's like 0.1, and that means that for each USDC you get 0.1 of the deep tokens, and so for the user researcher that could be 0.1. For a workshop facilitator, we could say the weight and their influence is higher, so they're 0.2. And so they receive more tokens for potentially the same amount in stable coins, because the functions are like valued differently. And then yeah, people kind of accrue different amounts of governance tokens, and then they can take part. Currently, the decisions that they can take part in are very simple. So it's more like, do you agree with this overall distribution of funds? And if someone says no, then we just reevaluate that and make sure that people's interests are represented. But there's obviously a lot more that can be done with this kind of distribution. But again, it needs to be clear and clearly documented what these functions are and how they also relate to each other. So I think yeah.
Okay, thanks for the explanation. Regarding the governance token, did there is a limited supply? Did it unlimited, or did that work? Because what I understood, it's like whenever there is a stablecoin payment, there will a new token is going to be generated.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So over time, if you don't work, the supply increases and the value of your vote diminishes relative to the work that the organization is doing. So you still have some of it. You will always have a certain amount or percentage that you can participate in any decisions with. But yeah, the more the organization progresses without your contribution, the lower will be your voting weight. And that's also not connected to chronological time. It's connected to the actual projects that are completed and the tokens issued.
Okay, makes sense. And so, as you say, so right now the main use case is to define, okay, did this valuation or this retribution, it's fair, and maybe tomorrow it's going to be, did we want to evolve this way, or for whatever reason.
Could you say that again?
What I try to say, it's right now the governance token has only one use case.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's when someone can say, okay, I'm okay or not okay with this distribution of a fund, but maybe for tomorrow it's going to be for any decision.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. But again, it's not the case at the moment, and we don't have that infrastructure in place yet. So it is an ERC20 token that you can hold on your wallet, but it's not. It doesn't have any other use at the moment in the organization aside from in Snapshot. So you can only basically go to Snapshot and then say that you don't like a particular proposal that is currently active.
Okay, perfect. Can you so you have work on so I'm shifting a little bit, but just before, did there is anything else that you want to say about Deep Work Studio?
No, not really, unless you have any questions.
And so maybe my last question, it's if, for example, a freelancer watches that interview, what either a freelancer or someone looking for a job, what would be your advice to join your world?
Okay, yeah, my advice would probably be, first of all, to get familiar with the documentation, to definitely check out the quick start guide, because we wrote a little guide that goes through the steps. And then I think the best way to actually end up doing work is by doing work. So by doing work and making sure that other people can see it. So currently there's more and more projects that kind of emerge as people who just are interested in exploring certain ideas, and we're just experiment with a lot of things. These things are not compensated. It's just experiments because we don't know the value of them yet. Over time, they might become compensated. But I think that the best strategy is to do work. So first of all, to become familiar with the process and the functions of the organization that seem to resonate the most with you. So the ones that you think are most interesting. Let's say you have skills in product design and that's what you're interested in. So get familiar with what's required in Deep Work Studio for you to be a product designer. And then join the community, and then find the people who are doing product design, maybe chat with them, ask them what's their advice, how would they judge your work at the moment, are there any opportunities where you can help them, and establish with them a mentor-mentee relationship, a friendship maybe, that shows that you're interested in the work and you're interested in helping them in some way. And I think establishing interpersonal relationships is probably one of the best strategies, because, and also don't be discouraged if someone just doesn't reply or doesn't want to do that, because there's a lot of work and only a very limited span of or like amount of attention that we can individually spend. So I cannot onboard and mentor every single person. I have to say, like, I don't have time or capacity for that at the moment. So maybe you ask this person. So I think trying to be open for learning and finding and weaving relationships with people who can teach you something is probably the best approach. And if they are part of Deep Work Studio, then opportunities will emerge over time as a consequence of that.
Perfect. So I wanted to go on a rabbit hole, but I will not have the time. So I'm going to stick with Deep Work Studio. So what is the thing that you know right now? So basically, when did you start working on a Deep Work Studio?
Early 2019, we kind of legally founded it. I think that most of the principles that are employed in how Deep Work operates date back to like 2015 or so, when I tried to figure out processes and norms, how to make creative collaboration work purely remotely. Almost like there were a lot of different open source projects and they were good at developing with each other and writing code, but there were no like official processes for design and creative collaboration. And that's what I started exploring in 2015 approximately.
Okay, perfect. So since you started creating, and working on a building Deep Work Studio, what are the things that you know right now that you would have loved to know when you started? I think,
a lot of things I learned and informed. But I also, it's hard to say, because I approached my building Deep Work Studio with that mindset that I have to learn a lot, and that this is going to be the building Deep Work is going to be a learning experience in itself. So one of the things that we learned the first was that long-term contracts in an unstable economy, which back then was designing products for Web3, is not going to be sustainable for the organization. So we had to start working with freelancers, going through like a painful episode. That finding talent is very, very hard. And actually the way that the current ways of hiring just don't work. So both sides are misincentivized. I think that was one of the biggest learning too, that we needed to really work with someone, be open to mentoring them. I think one of the things that's still the biggest is probably that people are extremely different. And it still surprises me to this day when I work with people, how much like different backgrounds and different approaches to life there exist, and different ways of communicating with each other. It's very easy to misinterpret what someone is saying. And also for myself, like there's a lot of situations in which I become reactive for no reason. And I have to kind of balance my own emotional state. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I wish I would have learned earlier is to like balance myself individually and kind of not let that negative energy out or like go back to someone, but just like kind of capture it and then tone it down and then stabilize my surrounding. That still helps a lot, and that also emanates through all aspects of life and the company. Yeah, I would say these things are probably the biggest ones. Mentoring and learning is crazy.
Okay, thank you for the emotion one. And what is the practical thing that you do? Because that is the learning,
Right.
But say that it's easy, but in practice, what are you doing, to try to balance your emotion and
Yeah.
to don't, whenever you are, I believe it's when you are handling negative feedback,
Yeah.
to don't blind negative feedback with emotion.
Right. Yeah, I'm always open to that. I learned the way to make sense of that feedback. So to accept it and accept that I'm at fault many times, and it becomes almost like a positive thing when someone says something that challenges me. Then of course it hurts a little bit, but then it's like, let's rework that and think about how we can improve, and then it becomes something better. There's also a side project that I'm working on with a small but very, very smart and exciting team as well. We call it the Human Accelerator. It's kind of a code name at the moment. But essentially, the point of that is to make you aware of all the activities in your life that you're spending your everyday time on and how you prioritize them. So I prioritize sleep, exercise, nutrition. These things have to be as stable as possible in my everyday life. Because if they are, I can afford to be unstable in a lot of other environments, because I can always go back to being kind of physically, mentally as aware as possible of what I'm doing. And then because I'm aware of these things, I can make changes and adaptations as my environment changes, as new things come up. So nothing really like is so strong that it really blows me away. It's just it's small changes that can always let me adjust how I structure my life. So I have like a notepad that documents all my activities as verbs that I almost like go to every day. It's actually becoming more addictive than any social media. It's just going and making sure that I'm stable.
Okay. But it's a fixed note that you are reading, or it's more like a dumping thing?
It's both. So it's actually a representation of my current state. So I use it to keep track of like my exercise routine, my my nutrition routine, the times when I eat, the things that I learn when like what improve my sleep, or if I'm just currently like learning a new topic, I'm just like, what are the best ways that I can keep track of that help me learn better. So I try to use it as a notepad that represents my current activities in as realistically as possible. And then when I diverge from that, I can always go back and change it so that it's like, this is exactly how I approach life all the time. And then it kind of helps me just to see. I do every weekend, I do like a check-in. Are these still the right priorities? Is sleep still top one, or do I need to like, shift certain things around so that next week is going to be slightly different? I don't know if that makes sense.
Everything that you say makes sense. And basically, what you just described make me think of some part of the Miracle Morning. So did you inspire yourself from that? The Savers routine?
Yeah, I have. I think there's a lot of inspiration from a lot of different sources that's kind of converging over time. I think like definitely stuff that Tim Ferriss wrote. I mean, also like Jordan Peterson's learnings, Krishnamurti, all of them have very similar kind of tendencies towards focusing on individual mental and physical stability in some way, and understanding yourself and structuring your routine, for sure. Yeah, I think like the more stability you can get in your life, the more you can get into a routine, the more you can allow yourself for freedom. And like it sounds strange, and a lot of people are not ready for kind of that stability, and they have like a lot of instability in different kind of segments of life, or it might seem uncomfortable to think about eating the same things every day. But I think it also offers a lot of freedom if you can like look forward to, the most delicious meal that you will have today, every single day, and that offers you like a lot of time to do other things, because you don't have to actually come up with like, oh, what am I eating today? What am I eating tomorrow? what do I need to do in order to get my sleep straight? It's just like, I know that works, so I don't have to spend thoughts on that.
Yes,
and I can learn
make a lot of sense. So I'm going to end, but I'm going to show one. Wait a second. Yes, so I'm going to show you a tweet that you have. So basically, it's a reply. So someone said, so it's Eric Wall. Have you realized yet that the only skills worth working on is how to prompt the AI? And you reply, I don't know, man. I still like the skill of caring for other people. It's so you.
Yeah.
I still like this one. So basically, I was thinking about this tweet. Whenever you were talking about dealing with the emotion when you were dealing with your coworker, and I want to use that as your mic drop. So what can you share about that?
I mean, I agree that it's going to be important of how to interact with AI, but I think that like in the past like decades, we have developed unhealthy ways of taking care of each other and misaligned ways of loving each other and helping each other. And it's a skill that we need to develop, and it's very hard because, again, like, people speak different languages, people express themselves differently. There's so much stuff that goes on in our bodies that we need to keep track of. Otherwise we drift away. So I think it's equally and I think that with the trajectory of technological development, there's one of the key skills that will never go away is our way of socializing with each other. Like, nobody can automate that. No AI will automate, and we don't want, like, as humans, we don't want to automate away social interaction. Like, that's why we exist as a species. We can speak to each other, and a single word can change someone else's emotional state in an instant, and hopefully into a positive direction. And I think that it's a skill to use ourselves and our bodies, our language, to make other people feel great and feel good and balance each other's body budgets and health and emotional stability.
So thank you for everything, Andrej, for your time and how you explain things, basically. So I hope that everyone that is going to watch that recording will so first learn a lot about Deep Work Studio, but also know a lot about you as a human and everything that you care about and that you have that you have presented. And I hope that people are going to know you very more, since that this interview.
Yeah, cool. I really hope that it helps, and I'm really looking forward to a lot of people living in a world where a lot of people are living in harmony with each other. This might be a bit too aspirational of a thing to say, but yeah, thank you for your time and for hosting me. Thank you
to have you. So bye, and I'm going to see you on social now.
Amazing. You too, man.
Bye.